Okay, so I'm back. 1 day hiatus. We had that monsoon of a storm cutting through here, and I couldn't hear a damn thing working in the shop because it sounded like somebody was just dropping ball bearings on the top of this roof, being a steel roof. Even the smallest drizzle sounded like a just downpour. So I went ahead and I waited to do this. I got some other things done. Got Robert's lower inspection plate put back on. Went through the transfer case real quick because there was a messed up spring that's for the retention ball in this. A couple other small things here and there that I patched up. Nothing too major, nothing I really wanted to throw on film. Finally got Robert's fuel pump block off plate put on. His is just plain. Mine's got a little bit of a risque design. If you're on my Facebook, you've probably already seen it. If you haven't, you'll see it when I start touching on the 76, or maybe I'll do it on a surprise video. I'll go over the fuel block off plate later. As you can see, I don't have the injectors in the motor right now. Reason being that I'm going to kind of try and see if I can capture on film without it being all jacked up my procedure for going ahead and putting my injectors in and doing the R&D rails. Now with the R&D rails, if you're not familiar with it, and again, this is not my method. I mean, I use this method. This is something that I've done on 2 other trucks now that I've dealt with these rails, technically one being a Falcon. Sorry, Brian. Yeah, I know. I forgot your copper washer. He's going to give me hell for that forever, I swear. But anyhow, with these rails, it's kind of counterintuitive the way that you have to put all this together. You would normally think that you could throw your injectors in here with your copper washers, Brian Grilly. And then you would go ahead and seat your rail a lot like what you see here. Can't be farther from the truth as to how you're going to put that together like that. It's never going to work. You're going to wind up pretty much tearing your O-rings to hell. You're either going to nick them, you're going to break them, you're going to put a flat spot to them, they're going to get tore up. And the reasoning for that is that these are so tight in their tolerances that really you can't get this whole rail on here just perfect around those O-rings, which is a good thing, while the injectors are seated. So I'm going to show you my method for doing this, slightly modified. I haven't done it quite this way because normally I would put a flat nylon washer on top of the rails. It kind of keeps it from getting them scratched, though at the same time the last one that I did was painted, so that does help. But this time I'm going to do it a hair different. I'm going to do it without the nylon washer, so hopefully it goes well. If not, this is going to be a complete shit show. So I have my rail here. I have my injectors, the stage ones, the punch outs. These are Justin's injectors, stage 1. And then I have, obviously, my washers, Brian Grilly. I am still sorry for not doing that correctly on your Manchero, dude. Stupid mistake. Anyways, the other critical component is, so I have a lot of injector rails. Actually, there was a bunch of them here. And for the longest time, I was collecting these things. Mostly because I'd see them in the scrapyard and I figure one day we're going to run out of injector rails. I have that problem, fasteners, injector rails, so on and so forth. Anyhow, so I took one of the ones that was one of the worser example of my injection lines. I don't know why I kept on saying rails. Anyways, I took the worst example of our injection lines that had a pretty good crush in it. I think it had been bent for a turbo system. I don't know. Anyhow, so I went ahead and I trimmed off the tops from them. One of these was a pretty decent curve. And went ahead and ground it down with a bench grinder. So you can kind of see how it has a little bit of a lip on there, a little sharp, but not that big of a deal. And made that so that way it won't fall all the way through. Sometimes I just put like a little zip tie on them. Don't have one right now. Don't want to dig around and try and find one. And so I will take at least 2 of these. Sometimes I've done 4. 2 is enough if you do on either end. And I'm going to place it on the rail on either side. That will allow me to cinch down these injectors properly with the rail on. The other critical component that I need to do this is lube. That was a little creepy, wasn't it? Anyhow, Vaseline works well. O-ring lubricant. I love the O-ring lubricant from Super Lube. They make one in a liquid form and they make one in a grease form. I usually tend to use the grease form. This could work with grease or the liquid super lube. Make sure to get the O-ring lubricant. I use those on 6.0s for their little key O-rings that are on their fuel injection pressure regulator. The next best thing when you forget it all the way in Idaho is Vaseline. Really, really good assembly lubricant. It's a little creepy to have it sitting inside of your toolbox, but it works. And it makes an interesting story. You can kind of screw with people if you like. I don't know if you're that kind of character. Brian really would be. Anyhow, so this will help me lubricate my O-rings. So my first step in all of this is to put my O-rings on. Or, I'm sorry, to put my copper rings on. Anyhow, so sometimes I will just go ahead and take a little bit of Vaseline in this case as well and use that to get it to stick to the injector. That helps. You don't have to do this. I have not run into any leakage problems or anything else like that other than forgetting to put the damn washer on. And I will go ahead and put a little bit of that lube on there, press it on there. It's not going to fall off. I don't suggest using any other lubricants other than what I'm using here. Just for the fact of you never know how those lubricants are going to add buildup or anything else like that while you are assembling a motor, or not while you're assembling the motor, but after you've assembled the motor. You could be kind of screwing up some rubber if you're using it on a rubber O-ring. In this case, these are all Vitten, if I recall correctly. You might leave behind some residue or start kind of waxing up depending on the oil. So just any old oil doesn't really do it. I used to do a lot of pipeline and some refinery work. And all of this stuff sits in the bottom of a coke tower and is kind of a byproduct of the oil refining process. The beauty of it is after it's all cleaned up and all that carbon nasty stuff is pulled out of this stuff for Vaseline, it's actually pretty damn pure. So the nice thing about it is as opposed to like if you're using as a cam lubricant or something like that other than a break-in lubricant for assembling with bearings or anything else like that, it actually doesn't leave behind any residues because it's actually part of the oil. It will break down completely in the oil. You still do want to flush out your oil, but when you're using it in an application like that, it works fairly well. So now that I've got my O-rings, or not O-rings, my crush washers on there. Boy, I don't know where my head is today. I'm going to go ahead and lubricate my O-rings. The O-rings, I just go ahead and just take a dab on my finger. My fingers are probably dirty as hell, but it shouldn't matter. And I will spread that all around these O-rings and just make sure I've got a good old nasty layer of it. The way I figure it, the diesel's going to wash the majority of this away. Again, I have not run into problems with this with Vaseline or with O-ring lubricant. The way I see it, use it liberally. You know, do it just like they'd be sending out welfare checks. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to make that political. That's not what I meant. But anyhow, you get what I'm saying. You gotta take a little jab at some people sometimes, man. It's just worth it. So, now that I've gone ahead and applied that on there, I've got to do this 3 more damn times. And I don't have my editing rig here with me, so guess what? You get to watch my ass do it. Or you can fast forward. That's cool, too. So, yeah, this has been a long time coming. Robert actually had these injectors for quite a while. I think I may have mentioned in the last video that Robert was actually one of the first buyers of these. And Robert had actually gifted me my stage ones without telling me first. And he had traded a bunch of injectors because my usual thing. I usually tend to keep a bunch of crap, and every time I go to the scrapyard, I grab a ton of it. And I don't want to know how much I've spent in those scrapyards, but I should probably take stock out in them. And yeah, long story short, we got a huge discount on these injectors, and I think a pump. I think it may have been the pump that was actually what was discounted, but we'll call it the injectors. My pump, the 90cc, and these injectors, and the injectors that I got for Red Green, my 76, were all kind of discounted in a way by giving Justin a ton of core injectors. I think at the time we had 50 injectors, somewhere around in there. So anyhow, I've got all of these O-rings lubricated. Still have my washers stuck on the end. Got plenty of lubricant on there. And so what I'm going to go ahead and do is, while twisting slightly, I'm going to be inserting these O-rings, and the lower O-ring always seems to be the one to fight me. But insert these rails all the way down to the point where I seat. Now you're going to feel a pretty good click, and you're going to be almost flush on the surface after the threads inside of this when you're actually seated properly. That is important in doing this, because otherwise when you start cinching this down, it can score up the top of your rails. And the other thing that can happen is you can wind up having your injector kind of slightly popping out and develop a leak. Now I'm going to try and make this that way you can hear this, so I won't talk over it, but you'll really hear that audible click. So hopefully you could hear that. And those actually tend to do pretty well with just a little bit of lubricant. The O-ring lubricant seems to do the best. So there'll be a first click that's kind of like a pop. Okay, well that's nice. Anyways, a nice little pop, and then a click. And I'm going to move into the next one. I don't know what I dropped. I suppose it wasn't important if I don't know what it was it? And the click. Okay, so now that I have all of these seated, I'm going to go ahead and clock my rails. Obviously, you want to have your threads out because that's going to be your crossover. These have threads on either end. One can be plugged, one can be not. I usually tend to do that afterwards. Robert was nice enough to put the alternator and plate in my way. I might be removing that later. I might not. I'm going to go ahead and check to see that I have those copper crush washers on there. I do, Brian. Manchero, I know. Anyhow, hopefully he's not watching this shit, because I'm sure he's talking shit like a son of a bitch. Cyrus McCormick. Brain. I always did laugh at that, man. You know, I used to give him shit. He got banned on Facebook all the time off these Facebook groups, and I never did for talking all the shit that I did. And guess what? I started getting banned too. So anyhow, I'm going to be putting one of these on either end. The nice thing about these being on here is that they should, as long as I'm applying direct pressure down, float above the rail. It doesn't always work out that way. But the reason that I'm going ahead and put these on here is that I'm going to be turning each one of these injectors one kind of pass with a wrench each time to go ahead and seat these down. But when I'm doing this, I'm going to make sure that I have a little bit extra pressure on either end of these, and this keeps everything from falling off. It really, really helps in installing this. I did not grab my wrench that I need for these injectors, so I'll be back. I do have the 5/8. All I'm going to do is just grab the injector, bump it. 5/8 injector, bump it. I will be back with that wrench. Now I'm back. Anyways, video magic, right? So I grabbed one long, one short. I am going to be running the short one, so my 1-inch wrench. And so I'm going to work from the back and work my way forward. But first, what I'm going to do is, since I want these ones to be just a little bit tighter, I'm going to go ahead and clock these out. So that way, they are a little tighter than they should be. Now, Robert was gracious enough to go ahead and leave this here, and I went ahead and I put the pump in first, which I probably should not have, but I will live. So it does not look like that the injector is wanting to seat for me. You want to kind of grab one thread. As long as you've got one thread on this thing, you should be okay. But getting all of these injectors just to kind of square up and seat right, so that way you're not pushing on the end of the injectors, especially where that little seat is for that little pintle. That makes the big difference right there. This one went ahead and tried to come out a little bit, but that's okay. It will push its way back down. So I'm going to make sure that I have one thread on there, which I do. I do not have my thread there, so I will push down on this a little bit and try and get my thread. There is my thread. It's starting. And there we go. I've got it. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to go ahead and turn this slightly. And then I will go to the next injector. Turn that slightly. It doesn't have to be perfectly the same turn each time, but it does help. And so now I will go down in order. So this one here, This is just hard with all of this assembled. Now, normally this would be something that I would do without a lot of this engine assembled. I'm just applying a slight amount of pressure down on the rail, not a whole lot. I might skip this one next turn around. And so what I'm watching for is just to make sure that these injectors, especially the ones in the middle, are not popping back down at that surface that's just underneath the threads. I don't want those to start sliding out because that's when I have to worry about the lower O-ring potentially tearing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through that one. I'm going to go through this one here. Okay, so that one's starting to pull. I'm going to put that one back. And I'm going to hit that one. Now, hit that one. Hit that one. Okay, now I start seeing this seating down, so that's good. I'm going to go one more time. And one more time. That should be pretty good for those. So I'm going to hit this. I'm going to hit this. I am going to hit, if I can get to it, this one. Really, with this here, it actually is giving me a little bit of a problem just because of how thick this Matco wrench is. Robert's got good wrenches, but a thinner wrench is actually better in a 1-inch. At least, so I'm told. Today's just a dirty joke day, man. Just nice, subtle, dirty jokes. It's just, it's been one of those kind of days. I could really use a beer, but I don't have one. So I'm gonna go ahead and hit that one more time. And that one more time. This probably isn't making for about the best viewing, but it works. I don't have a lot of small talk to talk about. I do have a surprise at the end of this video, though. Right now, actually, since we have a little bit of dead time, I would like to remind you, please like, subscribe, share. I'm going to be posting this on the Facebook groups and other various places, but I'll tell you what, if I can get up to 1,000 viewers, I am going to be happier than hell. Mostly for the fact of that I can go ahead and monetize these. I will be honest, I am trying to monetize my videos. And the reason why, if you haven't watched the rest of mine, well, quite frankly, I want to be able to sink money into this thing. I want to sink money into this project. I want better cameras. I want better editing equipment. I want better sound equipment. If I can do all of this, I should be set. And I can start making cooler shit for you. And then you have to see my ugly mug in better HD or God knows what. I'm sure you'll love that. So, these are kind of feeling a little on the looser side inside, which means that the rail isn't really pushing down on them, but I'm not seeing the surface pull back, so I should be okay. I have kind of done these outside ones a little more, and this one right here has been, I haven't been turning it as much. I kind of want to put a little bit more pressure down on it is what I'm trying to do there. But as you can see, as I'm turning these, the caps should be moving as well, because those do free float. They don't load up those plastic pieces, so Justin was smart enough to at least get the clearances on this thing tight enough to the point where they're a good tight system, but at the same time, they allow those caps to still float, so you're not loading up the rail. That's smart. For everything that Justin's done for the community, you know, I don't follow people like Jesus, but I do like the people that that put out some really good parts. I will. As long as they're producing everything nicely like Justin does, and a few others do as well. But I will... Oh, sorry, I had a little bit of an odd feeling right there. But anyways, I will defend them to the end on their components. It's not every day that you manage to find somebody that actually has the kind of the love and that passion of actually building a decent part. A lot of times anymore, you know, American manufacturing is hard to come by. It's hard to come by performance parts for these old diesels if you're not familiar with them. Boy, I remember when there was no performance market. A performance market was going out and buying a freaking an Allen wrench set and turning your pump up 2 flats, and that was it, you know. I remember when Robert was trying to build this thing out, we didn't even have any performance parts. There was almost no such thing at that time. It took him to introduce me into this market, and I haven't turned back since. I've been happy with everything that's been out there. And I know Mel had some stuff for a good while there. There were some pumps and everything, but you know, I didn't really get into it. I kind of left a lot of these alone. I think that's going to help if I just had this line kind of popped off. I went ahead and I cleaned up one of his mounting brackets and went ahead and put that up to go ahead and put this this throttle cable on. I'm hoping to try and fit the throttle cable to an 80s pedal that I have sitting around here in the shop somewhere. Trying to track a lot of those parts down at the moment. I have managed to go through a good amount of the shelves, and I have one down right now that I'm going to be taking back home with me because one of these was my regular part shelves, and I don't have as many shelves as I would like to with how many parts that I have, so Kimber took pity on me and let me take one of the shelves, which I am happy as hell about. This one here, I don't seem to be getting this one tight enough. I don't think I'm turning it quite enough. So, I really do wish I had a thinner 1-inch wrench. It would make this a lot easier. I actually have one that's ground down that's kind of a cheaper wrench that I usually use for this. I'm sure Mac or somebody like that's got a really fancy, nice, flat, kind of thin wrench, very similar to what I used on this R&D pump after I was done filming. But I sadly don't have one of those. I don't do a lot of high budget stuff. I do need to start reinvesting in tools. I had a lot of tools stolen from me over the years that just never got replaced. It just is what it is. So I'm not doing these completely even, and just for the fact of I'm kind of watching the rails, I can see this injector kind of pulling down a little bit. So I don't want to lose that kind of clamp down on that O-ring. I don't want to tear it. That's mostly what I'm trying to go for, is not tearing it. Tearing an O-ring is just going to be a big pain in the ass because you got to pull everything right back off, you know? And that's no fun. Yeah, there we go. That's a good seat. So I should be able to push this one down until it's almost tight now, because I'm starting to get a pretty good seat out of all of these. So now I'm starting to feel it bottom out on the washer here. I should be fairly close on this one. Getting that angle around this is a real pain. I should have taken that off. It probably would have made for a better video. But if anything, it really shows you what you need to have off anyway. And it's a good reminder for me. Okay, so these two are kind of bumped. They're not tight. They're not torqued down, but they are bumped. And so I'm going to go ahead and do these two centers. So that one's kind of got a bump. I can just kind of feel a little bit of resistance. And this one here is just proven to be a pain in the rear to get at. Again, this is a lot easier with these off. If you don't have the studs, Robert put 2 bolts in here, which is fine. It's not the wrong way to do it. I like having these 2 as studs, but another thing is it's going to be really hard to get at all these components once all this is put in. This can kind of be a little bit of a pain in the ass. So anyways, now that I've got that bumped, you could go ahead and you can go through and torque down your injectors. I don't have the fitting for this, and that's actually still a little loose. So actually that kind of backed off a little bit. Wow. But you could go ahead and start removing these, and this is why I run those little vinyl washers. I do have a little bit of a scrub right there, but it looks like that the injector did stay on, so that's good. But anyhow, after you go ahead and torque these down, you can go ahead and put your injector lines on this side and be ready to go. I will not be doing that in this video because I have to clean up the injector lines because they honestly are kind of just sandblasted at the moment. Robert was painting a couple of them yellow, just I think it's supposed to be like diesel fuel yellow. That was just kind of one of those things that he just kind of got a wild hair about on one of my stupid suggestions. I think I'm not going to be doing it in the yellow because those were like more of an engine paint. Being that the top end of this is fairly black, I think I might spray them in the Airvo Ford Gray, which is what the rest of this engine is painted in. I think that's really going to snap between the black valve covers and the black intake. I think Robert would have liked it. It would have popped really well. But yeah, onward to my surprise, I guess. So that's pretty well how to put these rails on. I'm going to do this one off camera. But the next surprise that I have. So, little story. Mike Green, some of you guys might know him from the forums, maybe not. He does a few parts and things like that. I forget the company name. I'll plug it next time if I can remember. But anyways, he started working with this gentleman that runs OBS Ford Decals. If you go onto Facebook and search OBS Ford Decals, you're going to find him. He makes all sorts of crazy decals for like the kind of like restoration stuff. It's a little bit more of a budget decal. I mean, it's not like a perfect reproduction. But anyhow, I think Mike had approached him about it, but he wanted to go ahead and start making the turbo decals, the blue and whites for the 93, 94s. I had several of those decals, managed to get a scan over to the gentleman over at OBS Ford Decals, cannot remember his name, and Mike, and kind of interacted with them so that way they could kind of get the fonts proper and like all the dimensions proper. Because they were really looking for somebody that had a decal on it, and all they could get was like photos of like worn out ones, and I'd kept them because again I have an obsession. Actually, I think it came off the valve covers. You can probably see over here in the corner because the white remnants are still on there. So he hooked me up with a couple of those decals at a discount for kind of helping him out. And he started launching out the IDI decals. Well, I had Robert go ahead and get a hold of him at OBS Ford Decals. Boy, can I plug that enough. And he sent over this envelope for Robert. Being that this engine came out of an 86 F250, which I just recently found the photos of too. I actually do still have them. So maybe I'll do an overview, like a benchtop video of all that. He went ahead and had him reproduce an emission sticker. So we have the original emission sticker that has now been reproduced almost perfectly. It's not a two-piece, it's only a single-piece sticker, so it might wear out. Told Robert to order two. He did order one, but I'm going to order another one, especially so that way I can go ahead and do the proper punch-out for the date on this thing and also which motor it is. Originally, this motor right here was the B158HA, which in those specs were 158 158 horsepower at 3,300 RPM. This was not the higher end motor, the B175, which is 175 horsepower at the same RPM. So I will probably get another one of these and punch that one out, but for the time being, I am going to go ahead, and if I remember correctly, this was offset slightly forward. And apply this decal. I know Robert would have loved to have seen this. He was excited as hell to see this decal. It really did make him happy. And actually, he wasn't even aware of it until he saw my blue and whites that are on my 6.9, because I kind of dressed it up like it's an IDI turbo. It's not. It's got the 093 turbo system off of 94, but it's not. I mean, it doesn't lie. I'm just adding horsepower through a sticker, but... And there we go. It's getting there. It's getting there slowly, but it is getting there. So, yeah, stay tuned. Again, like, subscribe. If you like these videos, I would like to keep giving them to you. Viewership would be amazing. If I can get these monetized, that would be even more amazing. Even if I couldn't, I'm still going to keep on doing this. I just want to be able to fund this project and keep this truck going. You know, the project means a lot to me, and being that it was my friends, and that Robert did a lot for me for bringing me in, not only into the community, but bringing me up to speed on all the performance parts and everything. You know, I have people asking me about stuff like these every day and the 70s trucks every day because Robert had faith in me. And because he had faith in me, I tried my best to go ahead and find out all the information I possibly could. I always learn things every day that are new. If you're not, you're either lying to yourself or you're lazy. So there's always things to learn about. There's always new things to do. But, you know, getting back to these things, it's just, it's cool to kind of share the history with younger folks or even older folks or people that just otherwise wouldn't have been interested before, and kind of pass that on. And that's something that Robert kind of did for me. He brought a lot of interest in stuff like this. If it wasn't for him, I wouldn't have even owned a dent side, and I would not have this obsession to this day. So thanks to him, he gave me a lifelong addiction. Again, like, subscribe, make sure to share if you want. Comment section, you know, go ahead and tell me what I'm doing wrong, what you might like to see more of, what you don't like. I'm fine with anything. Man, be hypercritical. You're cool. So, yeah, thank you again. Thank you for watching, and I hope you all have a good night. I'll hit you back up later.